The following episode contains content that may not be appropriate for children and some adults, as it makes reference to suicide and forms of abuse. Viewer and listener discretion is advised.
They have a way of covering things up, putting things under the blanket, acting like nothing is going on, and everything is so perfect. We're all perfect. And that's not the case at all. And for such a long time, my experiences with my emotions were met with a lot of backlash, with a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of people side-eyeing me, like, what's wrong with you? Like, get it together, And like I stated, I bullied myself out of feeling how I need to feel. But now I'm in that space where it's like, no, that other version of Lexi is not mad or angry or bitter. What it is that other version of Lexi was hurt and she wasn't attended to.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Legacy Speaks. Today, we're going to have an amazingly dope conversation with somebody who's in a community that we share. And I'm super excited because you guys know that I am in this space of wanting to showcase people's stories, wanting to be able to not only share a little bit about myself, but like have authentic conversations with other individuals who are passionate about mental health awareness and advocacy. And so obviously, this platform showcases a number of clinicians of color. People are doing amazing things, but I'm really big on just having conversations with individuals who are passionate about wellness in general. And this young lady I've met through the morning meetup, shout out to David Shands. And I'm super excited because she's just such an amazing sweetheart from start to finish. And so before we dive right in, I need you to hit that subscription button below. That way you can stay up to date on newly released content on a regular basis. If this is your first time checking in with the Legacy Speaks podcast, my name is Sierra Hilsman, licensed professional counselor and emotional wellness coach. So I'm going to introduce you guys to Alexia Peavy. She is the founder and owner of a podcast called The Last Conversation. And y'all, we're going to get into some real dope things. So, Lexi, can you let the people know who you are and a little bit about The Last Conversation?
Yes. Hi, you guys. Thank you for having me, Sierra. I really appreciate it. So again, my name is Alexia Peavy. I am the founder of The Last Conversation. It's a podcast that I started about 2 years ago, but within the recent year, I'm trying to be a little bit more consistent. The podcast was created just by the name. If you hear the name, The Last Conversation, you don't really know when your last day on earth is. You don't know when you won't wake up again, and you want to be able to vocalize your truth in the most honest, upfront way as possible and just spread it out to the world. So I feel like having those last conversations with your loved ones, with yourself, it allows you to just have a peace of mind, internally. So that was the reason for me coming up with the name The Last Conversation. I am a student trying to become a full-time entrepreneur, and I just have a lot of things under my belt at this moment. But as far as this podcast, it's really something that's bigger than me, and it's needed, especially for the community that I'm in and that we're in. It's very much so needed. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And y'all, yesterday she asked me probably one of the dopest questions that nobody has ever asked me before. And she asked me what would be my last conversation. And I was just like, oh, y'all already know I'm really big on existentialism, how we show up in relation to the universe, how we are able to utilize our gifts, talents, and capabilities, not just to serve ourselves, but to serve the world at large. And I've never been hit with a question like that. And so, Lexi, I wanted to talk about the bravery that it takes to have these last conversations with not only other people, but with ourselves. And so how have you been able to tap into the confidence, the bravery to push past the fear of having those deep conversations overall?
I think for me, it was more so I was in a space where I was tired of self-sabotaging. And I think it was something that was needed at some point. I don't think it was me being brave. I think it was me becoming tired of hurting myself over and over again. I got tired of being tired. And I started looking at it as if, there's a lot of things in this world that a lot of people believe that they can control. And sometimes you ever heard of that thing where they say, whenever we tell God our plans, he laughs at us?
Yeah.
And I looked at it like, you really just don't know when it is that you're going to be able to say, to open your eyes again. And it just felt like I needed to say something. I had a lot of things that I was dealing with internally. It was a lot of still that I'm dealing with. I had a lot of fears within my internal self, fighting my internal demons. And I just needed a way to say things that were my truth, and just get it off. There's this movie or show on Netflix. I don't know the exact name, but the girl from the 70s show, she was in it. And in the movie, her boss basically said to her, I want you to write this as if no one would ever read it. And when she said that, it kind of made me think about life in that way. You want to create, you want to show up for yourself as if you only have one more day to live, And I feel like for me, as I stated, it just got to the point where I was just tired of self-sabotaging. I was tired of blaming other people for my pain, that I was doing to myself at some point, because at the end of the day, regardless of what you've been through, you hold the people accountable for their parts, but you have to also be accountable for the parts that you allowed or that you're continuing to allow. And you have to digest that and be able to digest that in a healthy manner and move forward, So, and we don't know, we don't know, we can't control what other people think. We can't control why people do the things that they do, So for me, it was just a way of creating peace with myself, You said yesterday, Sierra, you was like, why are you so mean to yourself? It was a way for me to be a little bit more kinder to myself. Yeah.
Oh, I love all of that. Especially the emphasis of like being tired, right? Because we can know that something is wrong or that something is not productive, but still maintain business as usual simply because like that's familiar, that's routine, that's something that we're comfortable with living in. And so sometimes we need that catalyst that's going to create change. And I think we talked about this before, like the concept of choice theory. We're making choices every second, every minute, every hour, every day. And change is an active choice. It's a decision to not create those same patterns overall. And so thank you so much for being tired enough to want something different.
Hey y'all, it's Sierra. Make sure you head over to shoplegacysbks.com to check out the latest gear. As always, we have the classic therapy is dope crew neck as well as tees. So head over to cop your crew neck today. It comes in heather navy, that cardinal red, as well as that beautiful gold that we love to see. So head over to purchase yours, not only for yourself, but also for a friend as well. And we are offering free shipping right now. So head over to shoplegacysbks.com to cop all of your therapy's dope gear and check out all the other additional merch as well. Hey, lovely, shout out to you because I know mental and emotional wellness is important to you. If it wasn't, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. But lean in really quickly because I know sometimes it's really hard to create a plan and actually sticking to it. So let's take your mental health to another level. Ever wonder what keeps you from fully executing? Ever wonder how you can build the confidence for decision making? Well, guess what? You're not alone and I'm here to help. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com for your free mental health plan. It'll give you practical strategies for addressing your current mental health needs. But first, you got to tap in. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com to receive your free mental health action plan today. Do it right now. mentalhealthgoals.com. See you soon.
Thank you. No, I even just to speak on what you just stated, like I really feel as if, and it may be controversial to say, but I really believe that we cannot control if people want to continue on living their life. We can look at suicide and we can say, oh, if we said the right thing, if we did this, maybe we could have changed their mind. We could have made things make sense to them in a different kind of way. And the truth of the matter is, you can't control anyone's choice to, be finished with life, because at the end of the day, You know, as you stated, we all have choices. Every choice has a reaction, or is going to have either a pro or a con to it. And understanding that, it's like the platform, it could be controversial in me saying this, but it's really created for people to say their piece, you know, for them to really say their piece. There's a lot of people, you know, for my example, you know, as I told you, I did an episode with my dad, and he was not a present figure in my life for I would say 19 years. And me and him had a conversation, and we spoke on the fact, you know, that his absence played a big part in a lot of different factors in my life, you know, and how I had fear towards men, you know, and just my experience overall. And he expressed to me his space where he was at, you know. And honestly, if I didn't create this platform, if I didn't allow myself to be vulnerable and have that conversation, you know, with my dad, I would have probably, you know, continued on thinking, oh, this is what it was, and this is the type of man he was in that space and time in my life, you know. But there are a lot of things that we don't know, that people don't share with us, and we believe that they're these evil people, you know, or that they're, you know, the worst of the worst kind of people, but we just don't know what we don't know. And sometimes, you know, you want to control your ego, or you want to control, you know, what you think the outlook of things are, to the point where your ego gets tied into it, and then you start self-sabotaging, and you think that you're healing because you're being a strong, you know, as they say, Black woman, and you're putting up this firm, you know, wall that nothing is wrong, and you're gonna never be put through this situation again. But I don't think that's how life works. I don't think that's how you should live your life. I don't think that's how you should allow yourself to feel your emotions, you know. So yeah, I just don't want to be a brick wall, you know. I don't want to be a brick wall. I want to feel how I feel. I want to exist with how I feel, and I want to let it go and move forward with my life.
Absolutely. There's so many things there that I greatly appreciate. And I think we talked about this previously before, our shared experiences with our father. If it was not for my father's experience with depression, I would not be in this field. And like, I'm grateful for my clinical mental health counseling program, because it not only equipped me with the strategies and tools on how to become an effective clinician, but it thoroughly emphasized the need to listen to hear, and not necessarily listen to fix or listen to defend. I think a lot of people consider counseling as this space where people tell you what to do, that whole white coat syndrome. And we always have to let people know, like, we're not in the business of advice giving. We're in the business of like uncovering what's already within. Most of the times it's difficult for us to effectively communicate what's on our heart, because we may not have the language for it, or maybe because we never heard ourselves articulate our thoughts and feelings and our behaviors. And so thank you so much for discussing that, like saying that, like, I want to be transparent. I want to live in my truth. I want to make genuine connections with other people by being authentic in nature, because you already know in today's society, there's so many things that are happening. And like, I don't want to say that we've become like super sensitive as a society, but there's a heightened awareness that causes us to walk on these eggshells in our conversations. Like, I don't want to talk about this, or this may be conversational. We always have to put some type of disclaimer in there, because we're concerned about hurting other people's feelings. I think we confuse living in our truth, or a lot of people associate living in our truth or expressing how we feel with automatic disrespect. And I think it's important for all of us to understand that, like, my experience is my experience, and it does not encroach on yours, to a certain degree, obviously, but not being afraid to share where we're at, so that we can find middle ground. It's not to say we're always going to solve a problem or find some level of solution, but I want to have conversations that help us gain better understanding of one another.
Exactly. And I think, honestly, my experience just last year, you know, with a very close friend of mine, really allowed me to tap into understanding that at the end of the day, no one's asking you to be anybody different than who you are. We're just asking you to give us grace, and that will allow us to give you grace as well too. And let's have a conversation about what it is that is bothering us. And then even hearing you say, you cannot fix it. My job is not to fix how you feel. I can't fix anyone's pain. I can't come in your life and say, oh yeah, I'm going to tell you how to make everything better. And I don't want to be held accountable for fixing anybody's, pain. But what I can do is give you the grace and give you space to vent and vocalize. If you're angry, if you need to speak in anger, if you need to speak in pain, if you need to speak in, sometimes rage, is tied into that, or vindictiveness is tied into that. I'm going to give you that space to exist and be who you need to be. You're going to have to respect my boundaries. And of course, I need to know where your intentions are coming from when you're speaking these things. But this is the space that I want to create. And this is the space that I'm allowing you to have in my space. And let's work through what you're going through and let's be better off of that, And I had a situation occur. It's not a situation for me, but well, it is, because it's a friend of mine, she had a relative that passed away, and it was very emotional. It was very sad. And it was something that it made me have to actually take a step back, because when I was younger, I was one of those people that I felt like, oh, I have to fix you. I have to make you happy. If I'm not making you happy, I'm doing something wrong and I'm making you mad and I don't want to make you mad. And I would literally be so emotional because of things that were out of my control. And when her relative had passed away, I basically had to say to her, I can't fix this. And there's nothing that I can say to make this easier, but I can give you space right now for you to exist and for you to feel and for you to be what you need to be and feel what you need to feel. And that's honestly all you can do sometimes for people. You can't come into people's space and you can't, and it's in a way it's selfish. It's selfish for you to think that you are this be all, person that can just say, oh yeah, I made you better. I made you, some person that you are. And it's really not. People have to be within themselves and they have to sit within themselves and ground themselves. I don't know who's a spiritual person, but, ground yourself in God. There's this verse, I don't know the exact word, but basically the message I got from it, it was in the Bible. And it's basically saying anytime you enter a space, you ground yourself in God. Before you enter any room, before you go anywhere, you ground yourself in God so you can walk in that highness. And I think a lot of people forget that. It's a connection that you have with yourself, that you have with yourself, and you have to ground yourself in something that's higher than you, and you have to walk in that. It's not you being this, like I said, be all and thinking that you're going to make everything better, because sometimes you do that and, you make things worse. And I'm not, and granted, sometimes you think that you're loving someone because you're love bombing them or you're pushing yourself on them or you're trying to make everything right in their life. But what you're really doing is you're making a space where people don't know what boundaries are. People don't know how to be accountable for themselves, and in a way, you're not giving them the room that they need to grow so they can show up for themselves, so they can be the source that you need for them, So that's just how I feel about that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. When you said to ground yourself in something higher than yourself, that requires you to step back and look at the bigger picture. So there's a skill in dialectical behavior therapy called the STOP skill. It's a distress tolerance skill. And it's an acronym for STOP. So the first letter is literally you're stopping, just stop, don't think, don't breathe, don't do anything, stop. The T is to take a step back and to take a deep breath as well. The O is to observe. So you're gathering information about your environment, what's taking place on the inside. You're not interpreting, you're not doing anything. You're just observing what's happening internally and externally. You're looking at the circumstances and the lay of the land. And P is to proceed mindfully. So once you gather that information, you can make an informed decision on how to move forward. What are my options and what can I do in order to make sure that I can alleviate whatever distress stress that I'm dealing with. And I think that's so important for people to understand. It's just like, if you are going to enter into these spaces, not just physical locations, but also emotional spaces, before you enter in, gather yourself, or at least identify what's going on, because all of us are carrying some type of, I don't want to necessarily say baggage, but we're coming into spaces with our own belief systems, our own feelings that come from like events that happened prior to. And so like, obviously you don't want to be like super prepared and made up, but enter into any emotional space with a higher level of awareness, and also enter into this space understanding that this is bigger than you.
It is bigger than you. And it's like I have to take a moment to just ground myself. I'm one of those like nervous wrecks. I'm like all over the place. But it's like, that is like that's the most powerful thing that us as people need to understand about each other. It's like, we have this ideal that we live our life off, and we base it on our identity to the point where we don't give other people the chance or the space to exist as they are. And we become very judgmental. We become very mean to not only people, but their situations, their experiences, by just having this entitled mindset of what we believe things to be. And I think personally, everything is everything, but at the same time of it, there are things that are completely different from what I've experienced, completely different from what, the people that have raised me have experienced. And I don't think me walking into any space thinking I know everything is sufficient or healthy for not only just myself, but also for others involved in whatever is going on, So no, most definitely being aware of who you are, but also being graceful enough to allow people to have that space to just exist, So yeah.
Oh, that's good. I love that. I tell clients all the time, have patience and grace. And so even when we're adding this component of awareness, we're not becoming aware to like condemn ourselves or to be critical of other people. We're becoming aware so we can know how to effectively navigate these situations, being mindful of self, but also being mindful of the people that we're connecting with. And so can you talk a little bit about your own personal journey of becoming aware, and how have you been able to utilize that information that you've gathered about yourself in a manner that is productive and healing?
So it's just a little backstory. I'm still in therapy. I'm still working on things. So excuse me, guys, if I don't want to ramble. I want to, be as honest and vulnerable as possible. So I grew up in a Caribbean household, with my grandparents by choice. I wanted to live with my grandmother, because I was just grandma's baby. I grew up in a household where I was overly sexualized, by a person in the home. And it caused me to become very aware of things at a very young age. And it caused me to become very, sorry, I'm so sorry, guys. It caused me to become very sexualized, very, very over sexualized. I am dealing with a lot of addiction because of my experiences. A lot of, and when I say addiction, porn, masturbation, that's a real thing. It's a real addiction. And growing up, my relationship with people were very, very, either were really good or were really bad. I didn't have that in between balance. So that really played a part in a lot of my relationships growing up. It played a lot of parts in the way that I chose people that were in my space, or that I constantly allowed people to be in my space. And it reflected in how I communicated with people, as well too. Long story, I ended up moving to Louisiana. And when I moved to Louisiana, that was a very just sporadic thing. It was like I went on the Greyhound. I took the Greyhound to San Francisco all the way from Fort Lauderdale. That was a 3-day bus ride by choice because, the flight was a lot cheaper. But I was going through so much emotions at the time. I had just came out of a relationship that I put a lot of energy into, that I allowed to just take from me more than needed. And I have to be accountable for the places and the things that I allowed to continue to happen. And because of that, I just kind of needed a break from Florida. So I took the bus to San Francisco because I had a collective at the time out there, and they were having an event. And while I was on the bus, I drove through so many different states because it's a 3-day bus ride, from Florida to California, We drove through so many different things, and I seen so many different sceneries, and I experienced so many different emotions, but it was at a peace, It was like I was at a peace, understanding that all this that is going on around me, it doesn't have to keep happening. I don't have to keep sitting in my sorrows. So when I got back on the bus to go back to Fort Lauderdale, we passed New Orleans. I've always had this feeling for Louisiana since I was a little girl. I don't know what it is, but I have like this pull. Like it was a pull that like I felt like I know that if I go to Louisiana, I'm gonna be safe, or somebody's gonna like wrap me in their arms or something. So I got home, looked at my grandmother. I said, "Yep, I'm moving." She's like, she's a Jamaican Caribbean woman. She's like, "Lexi, go sit down. You just came back. Da, 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 da. Where are you moving to? Where are you going?" I'm like, "I'm moving." She didn't really believe me. At the time I was 19, she probably thought I was talking and just talking out my butt. So she didn't really take what I was saying serious. And then it came a month later, and I ended up leaving. And my mom, who for the longest, our relationship was very strained. It was not a good relationship. We argued like cats and dogs. Granted, my mother is an amazing mother. She has done things. She has been a single parent my whole entire life. When you're young, you just don't know certain things and you don't understand things until you get to a certain age. She cried her eyes out when she realized that I was really leaving. My mom cried. She begged me to stay. And me saying all that is to say, moving to Louisiana was one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life, because it was the start of a new phase for me. My relationship with my mother, still to this day, 2.5 years later, 3 years later, basically, has changed so much. Me and my mother are obsessed with each other. We love on each other so much in a different light that I never thought would ever be possible. I honestly believe that experience in itself gave me the room and the space that I needed from all my pain and all my sorrows to kind of just say, okay, what are you going to do better? What can we do better? So to answer your overall question, being able to be in my own bubble, being able to show up for myself without the support of my friends and my family, because I moved 14 hours away, with my car and just all the things that I had. So like bags and suitcase of things, and just my little Mazda. And I drove, not knowing what or where, how I was going to do this. But 2 years later, I was still doing it. And like I stated, it just made so much sense at the time. And it was one of the best decisions that I've ever made, because it just gave me so much room to just exist and to give myself the things that I needed. And granted, in the first year, still self-sabotaging, still, victimizing myself, using spiritual YouTubers, to tell me what I need to feel, being tied into my ego to the point where I was bullying myself out of feeling how I needed to feel. And granted, being alone, it made me realize, like, you don't got nobody else to blame. You're doing this to yourself. There's no one else around you right now. So who are you going to blame right now? You have nobody else to blame. So it just made me want to soar and be better for myself, and that's how I think I've always been. I've always wanted more for myself. I've always held myself accountable for a lot of things. And I've always tried to break things down to the nitty gritty and understand them for what they are, because I want to be better. I always want to be better for my internal self. I want to be better so when I walk in my truth, I could walk with the God-given gift that has been given to me by God. So yeah, that's like my say on that.
No, I absolutely love all of that. And y'all, if anything that Lexi said resonated with you, please make sure that you are dropping some gems or hitting that like button, because like all of that was just simply amazing. One, please don't ever apologize for your story. I know you started off with, sorry guys, I'm still in therapy. I'm like, no, like, thank you so much for your honesty and transparency in that moment. And I'm pretty sure there are a number of people who really were able to connect with that and understand like, yo, I'm not alone in this situation. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Thank you for allowing me to. I really want to say to people, and I'm still working on who I am as a person, and a lot of that work is going to reflect, and I'm praying on it within the next year and to continue. I need to work on the way I speak. I need to be a little bit more confident, a little bit more poised, and it's not to bash myself or beat myself, but these are things that I want to work on because it's part of my productivity. But I really want to let people know out there, there's things that we sit with, things that we want to take to the grave because we think that if we act like it never happened, we will be better. And there's things that are like literally killing us from the inside out. I don't know who's listening to this right now. They have something that's been sitting on their soul, that's been sitting in their spirit for ages at this point, and they found a way to act like it doesn't exist, but they haven't made peace with it. And I just want to say your truth is your power. You've made a mistake, or a mistake has occurred, or a situation has occurred to you, and you're not a bad person for that. We all come in this world and God knows the things that we're going to do before we even do them. And I think knowing that and accepting the fact that nobody's perfect. No sin is bigger than the other. I don't care what anyone says. It's in the Bible. There's no sin that I'm going to do or that someone else is going to do that's going to be bigger. A sin is a sin. What are your intentions? Where are you at now with where it is that you have internalized the thing that you're feeling? And just sit with that and understand that. And if you feel the guilt, or if you feel, yourself wanting to repent or just wanting to be better from your experience, if it's something that you've done or that has been done to you, allow yourself the grace to just be in your peace and to move forward with your happiness and just be at peace with the fact that you're still here. You're still here. You're able to open your eyes and see another day and to grow into a better version of self. Don't let your pain be something that cripples you. Allow it to be something that shoots you above the stars.
Absolutely. I appreciate that, because like you're speaking to like 2014 Sierra. I moved to Atlanta in 2014. And I was telling you about my journey of just like, yo, life was crazy. I had graduated. I couldn't find a job. I wanted to move up here to like explore life post-graduation. And even though I find it very funny because, we say like, if you want to experience some level of change, we typically change our hair, we change our location, we change all these things that are external. We fail to do the work that happens on the inside. And so at that time, I acknowledged that I was a Christian, I was a believer, but there were still some things that I was still beating myself up for. And I remember getting in touch or connecting to this organization called Saved in the City. And they always used to have these conferences every year, like these women's conferences in Huntsville, Alabama. And I remember this message still to this day, Pastor Fanika Friend. I was just like, oh my gosh, this amazing woman of God. She had preached this message on Hosea and Gomer. And for individuals who don't know, Hosea was a prophet, and he was called to marry this prostitute named Gomer. And it was interesting because it was a reflection of how like we as a people, as a body, as a church, we are the bride of Christ. And yet we continue to prostitute ourselves ourselves to like religiosity or entertainment or anything that is not of God. And so I often would judge myself on the decisions that I made in my collegiate life or in my high school years, all the negative relationships that I put myself through, or maybe even like that self-sabotaging of behavior, engagement, like you mentioned, porn, masturbation, all of those things that keep us bound. And I was just so challenged to uproot what I've put my identity in. And so for anybody who feels like they're stuck, that they feel as though like they can't make that necessary change, understand that the blood of Jesus Christ gives you the liberty to be able to live your life, live the life that you're called to. And so understand that, like, you know, like, please walk in your full authenticity, but also please walk in your full authority that God has given you. Like, we all here on this planet, on this earth, are spiritual beings, and we're gifted with all these amazing talents. And so please root your identity in who God is or who God has called you to be. But please live in the freedom that is like granted and gifted to you. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think 2014 Sierra needed to hear that again.
Yeah. And even with you speaking, something that was like on my spirit was something that I always say when I'm creating is finding the beauty in hell. And a lot of people, when they hear that, they're probably like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is you have to be able to sit with the ugly part of yourself. I know you were saying yesterday, Sierra, you were saying when people heal, they think that it's just getting up and getting your nails done and getting your hair done. And that's far from the truth. That's a cover up. Healing is dealing with the fact that you're the problem. Healing is dealing with the fact that you have a lot of self-sabotaging ways that has reflected into your identity, and it has reflected into your ego. And now you feel so sure about a lot of nonsense. And it sometimes means going back to a lot of ugly places in your spirit, in your life, that maybe it's you don't really know how to feel about it, but you know that you feel something, and it hurts. It's not fun. You hate yourself sometimes. You love yourself sometimes. You want to hurt yourself sometimes. And then sometimes you're like, I don't even want to know what is going on. You're just like a zombie. And that's what healing is. Healing is something that takes time. It's a continuous thing. It's a thing that happens throughout your life, you know, and even into the spiritual world, you know. It's something that you grow and grow and grow and keep just evolving on. And I think for me, my overall experiences, my overall truth, it's productive, but there's so much more to it. There's so much more to like what I'm saying. And I think right now I'm in a space where the best way for me to get things going is to ramble on a little bit. But there is like rage. There is rage. There I am, like, just how you said, you know, you started off and you said, I'm very sweet. And I appreciate that. I so appreciate that. But I know there's also this part of me, and I was telling you yesterday, there's these two places that I have. I'm super sweet, but then I have this part of me that is like the complete opposite, complete opposite. And the thing about that complete opposite person, it's very weird. I try to bully that person, right? I try to make that person the bad guy. You know, we try to do that. We try to make our person that's a little bit more stern, that's a little bit more, you know, this is what I said and this is what I need, you know, taken care of. You know, we try to make that the person of ourselves that we don't like. And for such a long time, I tried to play this innocent card. I wanted to be innocent, you know, because I wanted to tell myself that if I'm innocent, if I keep myself pure, if I'm a loving person, then people won't hate me. Then I won't hate myself, you know? But as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize I identify a lot with that other person of me. And that person is not a bad person. That little girl, Lexi, was taken advantage of at such a young space in her life that she didn't know how to tap her emotions into the right chord. So everything that I've ever felt leading up to me wanting to be better was always, my first train of thought was to be defensive. And then because I'm defensive, that defensiveness came from that version of Lexi. But I think what it is this, innocent Lexi has gotten so tired, so tired of just acting like everything is okay. Yeah, I come from a Caribbean household, and I don't know if you know about Caribbean people. They have a way of covering things up, putting things under the blanket, acting like nothing is going on, and everything is so perfect. We're all perfect. And that's not the case at all. And for such a long time, my experiences with my emotions were met with a lot of backlash, with a lot of verbal abuse, a lot of people side-eyeing me, like, what's wrong with you? Like, get it together, And like I stated, I bullied myself out of feeling how I need to feel. But now I'm in that space where it's like, no, that other version of Lexi is not mad or angry or bitter. What it is that other version of Lexi was hurt and she wasn't attended to. So she's been bullied to a point. I've been bullying myself for years, and I've bullied that version of Lexi to the point where she responds to me and I respond to other people with that anger. And it's as I stated last year, having the relationship that I did with a very close friend, it allowed me to see that when you love yourself and when you're loving someone the right way, it means that you're giving that person room to be who they need to be and feel how they need to feel. I was so conditioned to thinking that love was a form of toxic, love or control. I used to think that if they controlled me, they loved me. I used to think that I had an experience where I had someone say to me, if I could put you in a glass box and feed you, I would. I was like, oh, that's love. He loves me. That's love, And as I'm getting older, I'm starting to realize that wasn't love. That was control. And having to go back and back and back and look at all the factors that allowed me to think that was okay. Looking at how when you show up for yourself as well, too, just to throw this out there, when you start showing up for yourself, a lot of people around you don't like it. A lot of people that say they're going to support you, they have a problem with the new boundaries that you set. Even the people that are your source, even the people that are your great friends, and you know that they're good people, they just don't understand everything that you're experiencing or that you're going through. So they don't understand those boundaries that you set. Sometimes they say they do, but it's hard, especially for a person like me who never once had boundaries. Yeah. I was an open book, I used to allow any and everybody in my space. And I wanted to see the good in people. I wanted to believe that everything that you showed me that you were, was true, but that wasn't the case. So with me saying all that, being able to experience someone who actually showed me what real love is, and they required of me to take my time. It wasn't a rush. You don't, when you're loving somebody, it's not about rushing to tell them how much you love them. Loving somebody or loving yourself is an experience. Life itself is an experience, take time to step outside and actually soak in the fresh air. It's a blessing. It's a blessing to be able to open your eyes, to get out of bed, to go outside and to feel the breeze on your back, to feel the sunlight touching your skin. That in itself is a blessing. And being able to take your time and understand those things, you understand it's a beautiful thing to take your time to fall in love. It's a beautiful thing to understand, to actually get to know someone, So, I think that's just been my experience, throughout the last year. And I'm grateful. And and granted, it hurts. It hurts because, it's still healing. and I'm still working through things, and I'm still entitled in my ways. I still have ways that I need to be humbled in. And, I told you yesterday, Sierra, my prayer for him to be humble is, I always say, God, humble me to bow to the feet of my enemies. I don't want to be better than nobody. I don't want to show up as if I know everything, or I'm this, I have a power trip on my shoulder. I don't want that. I want to walk in my truth, and I want to be guided by my source. There's, I had a friend, some years back. He told me about the Bible. He was basically speaking on, when Jesus basically walked and, he didn't eat. And when he was telling me the story, and it's crazy because the person who was telling me the story, if society was to see him, they would think, oh, he's this, menace, but you have this man, who's grown up, and his experience and his story is so beautiful in itself, and you can see in his eyes, he's a Black man who was not nurtured or taken care of the way that he needed to be. But he expressed to me, the story in the Bible. And when he was expressing the story, he was telling me the story, what I got from it was, when Jesus was walking and he wasn't eating, he was meditating. That's how I feel about it. He was connecting with something higher than himself. He was finding a peace within himself. He was sacrificing the little thing to find that bigger thing, that bigger form of satisfaction. And for me, I understand that in a way that I don't even know how to explain it, but I know it's there, So, yeah. Thank you, Sierra.
No problem.
I go on and on and on, but people are like, you're not making sense, but it's
like, all good. Like, don't worry about whether or not it's making sense. There was one thing that you mentioned of like having to be in this place of like just saying it out loud, right? And so I always encourage clients, especially if they don't rock with journaling, I'm like, yo, start using voice notes, vocalize what it is that you're saying and what you're speaking. And so I know I was just like, I like, you were really in your bag just then. And so I just wanted to make sure that there was no interruption and that people
You're on mute.
People had the opportunity to hear that component, because there was just so many aspects that like thoroughly resonated with me. Just like the need to increase mindfulness, and like with, I think we were talking about like increased awareness, it creates this new level of gratitude.
Exactly.
It gives you this new level of like just being thankful for not just the big blessings, but the little things. And it also gives you momentum for continuing to live this life, to continue to have these last conversations with other people. I think, like you mentioned, oftentimes we struggle with effectively communicating how we feel because there are so many different components of ourselves that we haven't sat with and addressed. And so even as you were talking, you were like, these sides of me, these versions of me. And I'm like, no, they're all you.
They're all me.
They're all you. And so for anybody, because listen, y'all, yes, she's sweet, but when we was recording yesterday, sis started getting frustrated when people were coming to us. I was like, it's all good. It's okay. There's circumstances that are out of our control. Lexi was like, no, we need to move. Let's go. And I'm like, cool, bet, no worries. But there are all these different components of ourselves that we haven't made peace with. Interestingly enough, that's one of the things that I had started talking to my therapist about when I first initiated therapy for the second time. I was letting her know like how I struggle with perfectionism as a child. And like how you utilize like being sweet and innocent and being nice as a way for people to like love you and appreciate you and to accept you. I utilized perfectionism as a way to manipulate. I utilized perfectionism as a way to make sure that I was in the clear, that as long as I did everything that you wanted me to do, then you couldn't tell me no. That as
Mm.
long as like I did what I was supposed to do, it wouldn't make sense for you to not give me what I want, or for you to not like just allow me to like operate in the space that I wanted to do. And so like I think we talk about like the masks that we wear. I always wanted to present a certain way so that you wouldn't judge me based upon the things that I used to do. And so,
Exactly.
one thing with my therapist, I was just like, you know what? I'm a Christian who loves trap music, who does yoga, who will worship God and like will read the Bible. But at the time, I think I was still like smoking weed. Like I really wasn't like fully sold out
Mm.
for Christ. And I had to make peace with all those different components and find intersectionalities between all of those things. I had to make peace with the version of myself that experienced molestation. I had to make peace with the person who literally had to claw her way out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I had to make peace with the resentment that I had towards that relationship that really turned my life. I had to like make peace with all these different components, and kind of like the Japanese art of kintsugi.
Mhm.
Just take those broken pieces and like take the goal to create something that's just so valuable, to create this beautiful art that's just like 20 times more valuable. We
Yeah.
provide value through our imperfections.
Mhm.
And I had to learn that for myself, that trying to present a certain way doesn't do anybody justice, and it also doesn't do any justice for myself. It may make the other person comfortable, but eventually over time I'll be in that place of being tired.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You get tired eventually. You get tired of all of it. Like people think, people have this question that they always ask, why do, these button-up men, always end up seeming to like always kill themselves? Like, why is it that people who have all the money in the world end up killing themselves? The good and the bad can be the problem when you're not dealing with the real problem. When you try to make things so good to the point where all the bad is just becoming not nurtured, you have a moment where you snap. And sometimes you don't realize that it's building off of each other. You think because you're doing so much good by avoiding the bad, you're being productive, and what you're actually doing is you're suffocating yourself. You're putting yourself in a space where you're bubbling, you're making no room for yourself to feel. So when you explode on a 10. And that's why for me, even with my experiences, I'm, like I said earlier, I'm good. I'm a sweetheart on this side, but on the other side, when I explode, it's like a completely different version of myself. And my experience as I'm getting older and understanding that is, as I stated, I haven't nurtured myself. But when you do nurture yourself, though, everything starts to get so much better. For the first time, I don't want to be too explicit, but like for the first time, ever within my young life, I actually had good intercourse. Like it was actually good, and it was crazy because, I actually had someone in my space who allowed me to exist and to show up. And you know what I also realized as well? Whenever you're experiencing someone, you always want to experience them wholeheartedly with your whole truth, because even if things don't work out, you're able to walk away with that peace.
Exactly.
When you're trying to control how you make a person feel or how they're feeling about you, when you guys break up, it's like the worst thing in the world, because you wanted it to be something and you kind of put a narrative on what it is that you expected it to be, So all that to say is, I'm at peace. I'm at this internal peace with myself, knowing that I'm not okay, but I'm going to be better,
Absolutely. Oh, what a great way to close us out. Once again, y'all, if there is anything that resonated with you, please make sure that you are liking, commenting, sharing, tagging us at Legacy SPKS on everything, as well as at the last conversation _ Lexi, as you know, this podcast is called the Legacy Speaks Podcast. And this is a question I ask all my guests every single time. What would you like your legacy to say about you?
What would I like my legacy to say about me? I want my legacy to say that I was a fair person. I was a fair person and I was honest. And I want to be remembered for not being the best or being perfect, but I want to be remembered for giving grace when it's needed, you know? So that's what I would want my legacy to be. Yeah.
Absolutely love it. Guys, once again, please make sure that you're tapping into all things Alexia Peavy at the last conversation. Can you let the people know where they can tap into your podcast?
Yeah, so if you go to Instagram at the last conversation, I have a link. When episodes drop every Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern time. So yeah, if you ever feel the need to check us out, just check me out. Just, go to Instagram. Of course, I'm gonna add things on as time progresses. But yeah, if you go to Instagram, the link is in the bio. You can listen to all the episodes that are up. And, guys, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share my space, my truth, Sierra, and just creating a space, for me to exist with you today. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being on this journey of the pivot for the podcast. So I thoroughly appreciate it. I know we talked a lot about accountability, but ultimately what accountability is taking ownership. And so taking ownership of the good, the bad, the ugly, the uncomfortable, the beautiful, the magnificent, the joyous. And so for anybody who's listening to this episode, if you made it this far, we challenge you to just take ownership of all aspects of self in all periods of time, not just now, but in the past and in the present and the future as well. So once again, my name is Sierra Hillsman, licensed professional counselor and emotional wellness coach. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and definitely stay connected via Legacy SPKS on everything. If you are interested in staying connected, please head over to mentalhealthgoals.com where you can download your free mental health plan and you can get some additional strategies that you drop to your email every single week. So head over to mentalhealthgoals.com. And once again, we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Bye, guys. Thank you.